We're on our next lesson, which is 8-4. But what's nice about 8-4 is we continue our equivalent fractions, and the only thing that's different is we divide. We still have that saying of whatever you do to the top, you have to do to the bottom. But this time, instead of multiplying, it's division. So whatever we do to the top, if we divide by 2, we have to do to the bottom. We divide by 2. So let's head to number 1. It says, use division to show 9/12 and 3/4 are equivalent fractions. So what's nice about this is they're actually telling us that these two fractions are equivalent. They're the same. So we just have to think, how do we get from one to the other? Well, how do we get from 9 to 3? Well, we divided by 3. And then how we get from 12 to 4? We also divided by 3. So notice, whatever we did to the top, divided by 3, we have to do to the bottom, divide by 3. So let's head to our next one. This is also why it's important to know those division facts and multiplication facts. Is there a fraction with a smaller numerator and denominator that is equivalent to 4/12? Explain. So they're asking, is there a fraction that's equivalent, that's the same, that we can divide by? Because remember, division makes our numbers smaller. So what do you think? Well, this is why I had you guys practice those rules of divisibility for so long. It's because we can recognize 4 is an even number, so we can divide 4 by 2, and 12 is an even number, so we can divide 12 by 2. So now what do we have? We have 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. So there's one example. Now, maybe you also realized it doesn't ask for 2, but we could also divide it by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. So we could also get that for equivalent fraction. So now we need to do explain. We could pick either of these ones to explain. I'm going to do 2, 6. You can divide the numerator and denominator by 2 and get, well, what do we get when we divided by 2? We got 2, 6. So let's head to our next one. Again, this is why we need to know those rules of divisibility, because it's going to make it super fast. Here, I notice 6 is an even number and 10 is an even number. So whatever I do to the top, I divide by 2. I have to do to the bottom, I divide by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Now let's head to number 4. 8/12. Well, again, whatever we do to the numerator, we have to do to the denominator. So I have to divide it by something. And I see they're both even numbers, so I can divide them both by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 12 divided by 2 is 6. This one, we have to think, how do we get from 12 to 3? We could have divided this by 2, but notice, since they're both even numbers, if we divide it by 2, 12 divided by 2 is not 3. So we have to have another number. So now we use our rules of divisibility, and I see, well, I can't divide it by 3 because when I add 8 up, it doesn't equal a number divisible by 3, but I can divide it by 4. So let's try by 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So it looks like that was our answer. Now let's check this one out. Whatever I do to the numerator, I have to do to the denominator. And I'm getting smaller, so I need to divide. 10 divided by what equals 5? 10 divided by 2 equals 5. And then 12 divided by 2, because whatever I do to the numerator, I have to do to the denominator. 12 divided by 2 is 6. Number 7. How to get from 10 to 5? Well, I divided by 2. And whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. So I have to divide the top by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And our last one, how to get from 10 or 100 to 10? Well, I divided by 10. Remember, I just take that 0 off when I divide by 10. So it's the same thing. Whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. 10 divided by 10 is 1. Now let's head to number 9. So remember, when they put them like this instead of with our arrows, it's the exact same thing. So I'm going to divide my numerator. 6 divided by 6 is 1. And I divide the denominator. 12 divided by 6 is 2. Oh man, this is a big one. 70 divided by 5. Well, I can't do that one in my head because I don't know my 5's facts up to 70. So I can either count by 5's 5, 10, 15, 20, or I can divide by 5 here. 5 goes into 7 one time, so that's my divide. So I'm going to write my steps on the side. Does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers? And oops, I forgot my C for cheeseburgers. Multiply, 5 times 1 is 5. Subtract, 7 minus 5 is 2. Check, 2 is less than 5. So now I can bring down. There we go. So I bring that 0 down, and I go back to the top and I divide. 5 goes into 20 4 times, so I write that number up top. Multiply, 5 times 4 is 20. Subtract. Check, 0 is less than 5. Bring down is nothing to bring down, so my answer is 14. And now our next one is much easier. 10 divided by 5 is 2. Heading off to number 11. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. Number 12. 50 divided by 10. Remember, we already talked about when we divide by 10s, we can just get rid of those zeros. So I have my answer of 5. And the same thing, 100 divided by 10, I can just get rid of those zeros, is 10. So 5/10. Oh, this one, they tricked it up on us. So we have to think, how do we get from 9 to 3? What do we divide by? Well, I divide it by 3. 3, 6, 9. So now my next one, whatever I do to the numerator, I have to do to the denominator. So I have to divide by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So same thing here. How to get from 4 to 2? Well, since it's getting smaller, I have to divide. So I divided it by 2. Then whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Number 15. How to get from 12 to 6? I divided by 2. So I put that 2 in the bottom, and then whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And our last one of this row, how to get from 8 to 4? Well, it's getting smaller, so I divided. Then whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. 2 divided by 2 is 1 for 1/4. Now this next one, it doesn't have the boxes, and it says we need to find 2 equivalent fractions. So we're going to have to divide it 2 times. Or we could divide it and multiply. Any of these will work. So this first one, I'm going to divide it by 10 because it looks like that's easy. Because they both end in that 0. So I know I can divide it by 10. 20 divided by 10 is 2. 10 divided by 10 is 10. Then we have our next one of 20 hundredths. And what do I need to do here? I need to divide it by a different number. Well, I see they're both even, so I can divide it by 2. Because remember, if they're both even, then 2 is a number we can divide it by. 20 divided by 2 is 10. 100 divided by 2 is 50. So there's my 2 equivalent fractions. Number 18. Whoa, that was not what I wanted. 40 over 10. Well, again, I notice I can divide it by what? I can divide it by 10 because they both end in a 0. So 40 divided by 10 is 4. 10 divided by 10 is 1. Now the next one, what else can I divide by? Well, they're both even numbers, so I'm going to divide it by 2 since they're both even. 40 divided by 2 is 20. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Again, this is why I want those multiplication facts, so we don't have to do all those steps because we just know them. 16 twelfths. Well, this one we can't divide by 10, but we do notice they're both even, so let's start by dividing it by 2. Whatever you do to the denominator, we have to do to the numerator. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 12 divided by 2 is 6. And And this next one, ooh, well, I can't do 2. It's not 10. It's not 5. So now I have to check my others. What about divide by 3? Well, if I add those digits up, 1 plus 6 is 7. That's not divisible by 3, so I can't do 3. So let's do 4. Oh, yes, 4 is 1. Because I know my multiplication facts. 16 divided by 4 is 4. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So here are my equivalent fractions. Now off to number 18. 12/8. So they're even, so I can divide it by 2. So I divide the numerator denominator by 2. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then our next one, we can't do 2. We can't do 3 because this bottom number isn't divisible by 3, but we can do 4 again. So let's divide it by 4. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 8 divided by 4 is 2 for 3 halves. Now this next one, we have 24/12. I can divide it by 2 because they're both even. So let's head to divide by 2. Remember, whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator. 24 divided by 2 is 12. 12 divided by 2 is 6. Now, what you may have noticed on this bottom one is 12 is half of 24. So that means we can actually divide it by 12 since it's exactly half. So 12 divided by 12 is 1, and 24 divided by 12 is 2. Okay, this next one starts out easy. They both end in zeros, so we both know we can divide it by 10. 10 divided by 10 is 1. 100 divided by 10 is 10. But we need another one now. And thankfully, we notice that they're both even also. They're both divisible by 5 because they end in 0 and 5. So we can do 2 or 5. So let's do 5 this time for something different. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 100 divided by 5 is 2. And we add that 0 back on for 20. And 23. No, we notice they both end in zeros, so we can divide them by 10. They both end in zeros, so we can divide it by 10. 9 divided by 10 is 9. 10 divided by 10 is 1. And now what about our next one? Well, we notice they both end in 5s. They're both even. So we have some choices. Let's do 2 this time. 10 divided by 2 is 5. But I don't know 90 divided by 2. So I'm going to do my steps. Does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers? 2 goes into 9 4 times. Multiply. 2 times 4 is 8. Subtract. 9 minus 8 is 1. Check. 1 is less than 2, so I can bring down. 2 goes into 10 5 times. Multiply. Subtract. Check, 0 is less than 2, and bring down, nothing to bring down, so it looks like our answer is 45. So here again are my numbers that are equivalent. And our last one for this grouping, 80 hundredths. Well, what is that going to be? They're both even, so, whoa, I did it again. So let me get my pen. They're both even, and they both end in 0, so I can divide it by 10. 80 divided by 10 is 8. 100 divided by 10 is 10. And now, what else can I get for an equivalent fractions? Well, 80 hundredths, I notice, are both even, so I'm going to divide it by 2. Whatever I do to the numerator, I have to do to that denominator. 80 divided by 2 is 40. 100 divided by 2 is 50. So there's yet another answer we have. Now for our word problems. So number 27, let me clear these lines off that I accidentally wrote earlier. It says complete the table at the right. So we're using this guy. By writing the fraction of the day each animal sleeps and an equivalent fraction. Remember, there's 24 hours in a day. So remember that 24 is our total. So that total is always that denominator. It's always that bottom number, because that's how many parts, or in this case, how many hours we need to make a total, or in this case, how many hours we need to make a full day. So we have 12 24ths, we have 4 24ths, 15 24ths, and 16 24ths. Now I need these equivalent fractions. And it doesn't tell us what values we want. So we'll do this one first. We notice that we can change this into 1/2. Not only did we do that earlier, but we noticed that 12 is half of 24. So we would divide it by 12. Now let's head to this next one. Well, again, like so many of our problems, there's many answers we could put here. This one I noticed right away, I can divide it by 4. Because I can also divide that denominator by 4. So what would that be? 4 divided by 4 is 1. 24 divided by 4 is 6. So there's another answer we could have. We could also have 2 twelfths if we wanted. For this one, this one's a little different because it's a bigger number. But notice, I can divide it by 3. And how do I know that? Well, remember, my rules for 3 is I add the digits up. And if when I add the digits up, that number is divisible by 3, then I can divide the original number by 3. And notice 15 plus 1 is 6. I can divide 6 by 3. 2 plus 4 is 6. I can divide 6 by 3. So that means I can divide these original numbers by 3. As crazy as that sounds, that's our rule for divisibility. 15 divided by 3 is 5. 24 divided by 3 is 8. So here we go. That is my only answer for this one. Now, for this last one, what can I do for this? Well, I notice I can divide it by 2 because they're both even numbers. 16 and 24 are both even. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 24 divided by 2 is 12. We could also get, if we wanted, we could divide it by 4 and get 4 6 as well. We could divide it by 8 and get 2/3 as well. So those are all equivalent. So we've done 25. So now let's head to 26. Suppose the cow slept 4 more hours. What fraction of the day would the cow spend sleeping? Well, right now he spends how many? He spends 4 hours sleeping. So he would add another 4 hours to that. So that means he'd spend 8 hours sleeping, but it's saying what fraction of the day? So remember, it's 8 over 24. It's 8 over the total amount. Now our last one, 27. How many hours does a tiger sleep in 7 days? Well, it's not asking for a fraction this time. So it wants us to take the number 16 and multiply it by 7. And how do we know that? Well, let's draw a week. And this would be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So Monday, I don't know what I was doing. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And he spends 16 hours each day sleeping. And you'll notice this looks now like a multiplication problem. The repeated addition. So we have 16 times 7. 7 times 6 is 42. So I put the 2 down, regroup the 4. 7 times 1 is 1, or 7 plus 4 is 11. So how many hours does he sleep? He sleeps 112 hours in 7 days. I wish I was allowed to sleep that much. Now, our next one says Ethan ate 4/8 of the sandwich. Andy ate half of the sandwich. The sandwiches were the same size. Which sandwich had more equal parts? Well, remember, when we write fractions, it's our numerator over denominator, which is the same as parts over total, or the total pieces. So which sandwich had more equal parts? Well, Ethan had 8 equal parts, and Andy had 2 equal parts. So it looks like Ethan ate more, or Ethan had more equal parts. Whose sandwich had larger equal parts? Well, look at it this way. This is Ethan's, and this is Andy's. Andy had a half, whereas Ethan had 4/8. So looking at this, you'll notice what? You should notice that this part right here is much smaller than this part. So Andy had the larger equal parts. Who ate more? Well, notice that picture he drew, they both ate the same. So neither one ate more. And then that explain, we're going to use math. 4/8 equals 1/2. Number 29. If the numerator and denominator of a fraction are both odd numbers, can you write an equivalent fraction with a smaller numerator and denominator? Explain. Well, what do we think? It's saying if we have an odd number down here and an odd number down here, can we make it an equivalent fraction that's smaller? Can we write an equivalent fraction with a smaller numerator and oops, I got ahead of myself. I'm sorry, guys. It's asking if we have an odd number for our numerator and an odd number for the denominator, can we make a smaller number? Can we divide it by something? Well, you might want to say no at first because we always think of even numbers being divided by 2 is easy. But look at this example. What if I had 9 and I had 3 up here? Well, we could divide it by 3. What's even trickier, because it doesn't give us any more directions, is what if you had an odd number 3 here and the exact same number up top? Well, yeah, we can make that smaller because it doesn't even say that to be different numbers. But it didn't matter if they're the same or not because we obviously can because of that 3/9 example. So what would we need to do? We would have to divide. Oh, oops, we have to put our answer first. Our answer is yes. And then our explanation is we would divide both the numerator and denominator by a common factor. Remember that saying, whatever we do to the top, we have to do to the bottom. So that's why we spent so much looking at factors and our rules of divisibility. Okay, now for our last ones. Which equation is not true? So remember, if we did something to the top, we have to do it to the bottom as well. If we did something to the numerator. Here we divided by 2. Here we divided by 2. And both of those are correct. So let's head to the next one. 3, and here we multiplied by 10. How we got from 3 to 30 is by 10. Here we multiplied and got 1 times 10 equals 10. So that looks good. How do we get from 6 to 2? Well, we divided by 3. How do we get from 12 to 3? We divided by 4. So it looks like it's going to be C, but let's just check this last one. How do we get from 8 to 16? We multiplied by 2. 6 to 12 is times 2. So yeah, our correct answer is C. This one is not correct because notice whatever we did to the top was not the same as what we did to the bottom. Now for number 31. There are 12 students, so I'm going to highlight that part in DeLynne's class. 8 students own pets. Which fraction shows the class that owns a pet? Remember, our parts we have is 8. And then our total number, the total amount of people in the class is 12. And we'll notice that's A right here. Good job, you guys.